Islamic radicals are taking over the world. The world is under a serious threat, but when you read the articles, you can't see that. Articles published by the Brazilian mainstream media. In the first one, we see the headline, French police detain man who stabbed 3 women in Paris. This article was published on June 27, 2026. A guy out of nowhere, as you can see in the video, attacks people randomly, women, and the news is reported as if he were just an ordinary person, anyone, but that's not the case. Let's watch the video.
Attention! Attention! Attention!
Attention!
I don't know what he's doing. There's a word. I don't want any water. A sick person. A sick person. With knives in the name of Allah. Watch out, sir. He has knives. He's armed. Be careful.
Yo!
He's armed.
Stop it!
You filthy fat son of a bitch. Go fuck your mother.
Get that man!
Just by looking at the images, you can see that he's not a local. He's an immigrant, beneficiary of the open borders policy. In the other case, which also happened recently, we see the same modus operandi. On July 25, 2026, the following article was published on BBC News. Suspect in the attack on the LGBTQI parade in Berlin is shot dead during the police operation. Once again. The article makes a point of not highlighting which ideology and regime these guys served. Are they trying to cover it up? And hide from the public that what Trump and the state of Israel themselves have been facing is simply the personification of evil? We'll need a deeper analysis to understand. Let's look at the case of Berlin in Germany, the attack. A vehicle ran over participants of the LGBTQIA plus Christopher Street Day parade in Tiergarten, resulting in the death of a 65-year-old woman and leaving nearly 30 injured. The guy took the car and started running people over just like that. What was going through this person's mind? The suspect's profile. Just by the name, you can already start to understand who this guy is. What was his ideology? Which regime did he really belong to? Abdedu B, 21 years old, born in Germany but of Lebanese origin, with a history of connections to the Islamic State (IS). He had already been detained in Lebanon while trying to join IS radicals in Syria. Extradited to Germany and sentenced to a lenient sentence of 1 year and 10 months with probation. That judge, my brother, all about human rights, he sentenced this radical to only 1 year and 10 months but gave probation. It's the so-called law for young offenders. The individual was only attending de-radicalization sessions. He was free when he committed the attack. The case highlights how legal leniency and gaps in the monitoring of known radicals pose direct risks to European public safety. The truth is, my brothers, that for radicals there is no de-radicalization. That's a fact. Now let's move on to the case in Paris, France. In the attack, a man stabbed 3 women in the French capital before being detained by security forces. The incident reflects the persistence of low-complexity terrorism, the use of bladed weapons and vehicles carried out by individuals motivated by radical ideologies in major urban centers of Western Europe. Both cases expose 2 central weaknesses of the recent European model. The first is the inability to integrate and monitor. The idea that radicals can be easily rehabilitated through soft de-radicalization programs has failed miserably in the face of entrenched extremist ideologies. The second point is border control and sovereignty. Countries that favor permissive border policies and lenient judgments now face the challenge of containing radical agents already established within their own borders. On the other hand, strict sovereignty policies, like those advocated by Donald Trump in the United States, and doctrines of proactive intelligence and zero tolerance against terrorist infrastructure, like those applied by Israel, stand out as examples of firm containment. This video, my dear brother and sister, will make it clear to you once and for all. Like this story of encouraging people to be whatever they want, in other words, lowering the birth rate, opening the borders to people who have, on average, at least 8 children, and let them come here whenever they want, however they want. It's radically changing the global map. I'm Davey, you're watching Encarando a Sobrenatural Official. Welcome. And since this topic is really interesting and important, let's not waste any more time. So grab your good old rice and beans with sausage, and let's start our segment, Señores do Mundo. Señores do Mundo. In the last few hours, Europe has once again become the stage for tragic events that lay bare a crisis many leaders try to sweep under the rug. In Berlin, a van ran over dozens of people at a public event. The perpetrator, a 21-year-old man with a history of attempting to join the Islamic State, was serving his sentence on parole, even though he had been convicted, and was attending de-radicalization classes. In Paris, another knife attack left people injured in the heart of the city. What do these events have in common? They are not isolated. They are the direct result of decades of loose border control policies, legal complacency, and denial of the threat of Islamic radicalism in Europe. From this moment on, you will dive deep into the topics with me and understand why the European model failed and why. The stance of national sovereignty, adopted by leaders like Donald Trump in the United States and Israel's security doctrine, is proving to be the only viable way to protect civil society. Let's start with the facts confirmed by the German and French authorities themselves. In Berlin, the suspect Abdul P., only 21 years old, was already well known to the security services. In 2025, he was arrested in Lebanon while trying to enter Syria to fight alongside the Islamic State. He was sent back to Germany and put on trial. But pay attention to what the German justice system did. Because he was young, he received a lenient sentence with parole on the condition that he attend sessions at a de-radicalization center. He was supposed to attend 26 meetings. He was at the second one. The result? 1 woman dead and almost 30 injured in the Tiergarten. Meanwhile, in Paris, the police had to contain another brutal stabbing attack against 3 women. The pattern repeats itself: civilian targets, opportunistic attacks with knives or vehicles, and attackers fueled by an ideology incompatible with Western values of freedom and security. We can say that this is the failure of open borders and lenient justice. For years, analysts and leaders of the European bloc argued that the open door policy and unrestricted multiculturalism would bring about automatic integration. That was a proposal that is nothing more than fiction. Reality shows us the opposite. When a country gives up strict control over who enters and stays in its territory, it loses the most valuable asset of a sovereign state: the ability to protect its own citizens. The Berlin case exposes a dangerous illusion that ideological radicalism can be solved with conversations and bureaucracy. There is no de-radicalization. It is effective for those who have sworn allegiance to malicious groups when the justice system refuses to apply firm incarceration and immediate deportation of repeat offenders or radicals. Europe has created blind spots in its own security. It is estimated that thousands of individuals with extremist tendencies live under partial surveillance on the continent, a number that local police simply cannot monitor 24 hours a day. In this context, can we say that Donald Trump's view and Israel's doctrine are correct? This is where we need to make the geopolitical contrast. While the European bureaucracy hesitated, what did Donald Trump advocate during his presidency in the United States? The need for strict immigration control, rigorous background checks, vetting, and the suspension of entry from countries without reliable intelligence structures. At the time, it was widely criticized by the mainstream media. Today, the facts show that prioritizing national security over political correctness saved lives and kept American soil protected against major orchestrated attacks. On the other hand, let's look at Israel. The State of Israel faces the threat of Islamic extremism directly at its borders every day. What is the lesson from the Israeli doctrine? Zero tolerance, active deterrence, and preventive intelligence. Israel understood a fundamental truth decades ago. Against extremism that rejects the existence of your society, you do not respond with weakness or statements of condemnation. You respond with sovereignty, fortified borders, and relentless police and military action. Both the American approach under Trump and Israel's defensive stance are based on the same principle. The first duty of any government is the security of its people. Without secure borders, there is no sovereignty, and without sovereignty, there is no freedom. The recent events in Berlin and Paris need to serve as a definitive warning. This is not about prejudice or partisan rhetoric. This is about sovereignty, order, and the preservation of life. If Western nations continue to ignore the direct relationship between uncontrolled borders, judicial leniency, and the rise of extremism, incidents like these will continue to repeat themselves in the major capitals of the world. The solution involves redefining priorities, closing border loopholes, and imposing severe penalties on anyone associated with Mulderism, and adopting a stance of unwavering firmness. Exactly as demonstrated by nations that take their own defense seriously. That's why many conspiracy theorists are called that, or even more pejoratively, tinfoil hats. They argue that all this, Europe's stance, isn't due only to the reasons suggested by the causes they publicly champion. That is, in the name of inclusion, good coexistence, and so on. Many believe, my friends, and obviously there is no proof of this, these are just theories. But they believe that many of these rulers were financed by the Islamic State itself. And with plenty of euros and dollars in their pockets, they started to push forward and create laws to benefit exactly this stage of the plan. It may sound absurd, and as I said, there is no real proof of anything like this. But if we start to analyze the context of the situation, it starts to make more and more sense. For example, we know that in Europe, LGBT rights have advanced quite a lot. They have been working more and more to shape people's attitudes so that they don't think there's anything wrong, for example, with changing their own sex. They have increasingly encouraged relationships between individuals of the same gender. And this has been reflected. It's not just an opinion, it's just data. And it's the lowest birth rate seen in the modern world. Literally, Europeans are disappearing. To get around this problem that they themselves created by encouraging this, obviously people stopped starting families and having children. Modern families are completely different and unable to have children because individuals of the same gender cannot reproduce, just as our dear and late Dr. Aeneas used to warn. So, since they created this problem, the problem needed to be addressed. A nation does not exist without citizens. What solution did Europe find? Let's bring people from other nations into our territory. Let's make it easier for them to enter. But when we talk about Muslims, we have a policy that is contrary to what the European people have been practicing. So, according to the data, while the number of Europeans is drastically decreasing to the point that many experts say the birth rate is already unrecoverable, when we talk about Muslims, the opposite is happening. The average number of children per citizen is at least 3 per woman, and according to the Quran, they can have up to 4 wives. So, if each woman has 3 children, each Muslim man can have 12 children. And these 12 children will each have 12 more children. So mathematically speaking, you don't have to be a genius to understand that soon they will completely dominate Europe. This is obvious math, but leftist experts and intellectuals prefer to simply ignore it and dismiss the facts as political ideology or even prejudice. Xenophobia is the most common label they give to those who have been warning about the facts. It's no wonder, my brothers, that Donald Trump has been complaining day after day about the lack of action from European governments in this mess with Iran. Why do they behave like this if they themselves, as Trump himself has said, are the ones most affected? It's because of facts like these, my brothers, that so-called conspiracy theories have started to make a lot of sense in the minds of many people. And it's no wonder that most social networks have been banning these theories. Why is that, my brothers? Because this behavior from European leaders puts at risk their most precious asset, which is their own citizens. Think about it, my brother, because it's an attack at a pride event. And if it had been done by a Christian, maybe it would get a movie. Who knows, maybe even a TV series if it had been committed, I repeat, by a Christian. But since it was by someone they insist on defending, maybe that's the real reason for the silence. Anyway, that's all for this video. I hope you enjoyed it and above all understood. If that happened, share it. Show it to more people so we can bring this kind of content to you. It's not easy at all, my brother, but your presence here makes it worthwhile. May God be with you. Hug and always facing the supernatural here on Encarando o Sobrenatural Official.